The hallways of Westfield High School fell silent as the clock struck midnight. The only sounds were the soft squeak of rubber-soled shoes and the gentle swish of a mop across the polished floor. Maya Johnson moved through the empty building with practiced efficiency, her cart of cleaning supplies rolling quietly alongside her. At 42, she had perfected the art of being invisible. 3 years she'd worked here, cleaning up after teenagers and teachers who barely noticed her existence. During daylight hours, the school buzzed with life, laughing students, shouting coaches, teachers discussing lesson plans. But at night, the building belonged to Maya. She liked it that way. The quiet, the peace, the freedom to work without eyes watching, judging, assuming they knew everything about her based on the uniform she wore and the mop she pushed. Room 14 done, Maya whispered to herself, checking off her mental list. Now for the math department. Something changed in her posture as she approached the mathematics wing. A slight straightening of her shoulders, a spark lighting behind her tired eyes. This was the part of her shift she looked forward to most. Maya pushed her cart into Mr. Bennett's calculus classroom and began her usual routine, emptying trash cans, wiping desks, cleaning the windows. But her eyes kept drifting to the chalkboard covered in complex equations. Unlike the other rooms where she quickly erased the day's lessons, here she paused. The equations were beautiful to her, like an old friend speaking a language only they shared. Maya's rough cleaning solution one hands hovered near the board, not touching, just tracing the symbols in the air. There was a mistake in the third line of the integration problem. The teacher had dropped a negative sign. She smiled slightly, noticing how the error had cascaded through the solution. 20 years ago, Maya had sat in classrooms much like this one at Howard University. Just 3 credits shy of graduating with a mathematics degree, life had taken an unexpected turn. Her father's sudden illness, her mother needing help with the younger kids, bills piling up. The choice hadn't really been a choice at all. She pulled a small, well-worn notebook from her pocket, its pages filled with her neat handwriting, numbers and symbols dancing across the paper. For years, she'd been teaching herself, continuing her education in stolen moments between responsibilities. Advanced calculus, differential equations, number theory. The notebook contained problems she'd solved, theories she'd explored, ideas she'd developed on her own without professors or textbooks. Maya didn't just clean the math classrooms, she studied them. She memorized the problems left on the boards, worked them out during her lunch breaks, and sometimes corrected the teacher's own work in her private notebook. No one at Westfield High knew. Not the principal who barely nodded when passing her in the morning. Not the students who left their mess for her to clean up. Certainly not the teachers who sometimes stayed late, speaking around her as if she were just another piece of furniture. "My little secret," she whispered, tucking the notebook away and returning to her cleaning cart. She sprayed cleaner on the whiteboard at the front of the room, carefully avoiding the chalkboard with the equations. Mr. Bennett, the new calculus teacher, always left his work up. Unlike most teachers who cleaned their boards at day's end, he seemed to enjoy displaying his mathematical prowess for anyone who might walk by. Maya had noticed other things about him too. How he spoke loudly about his Princeton education, how he looked through people rather than at them, how the other teachers seemed impressed, but not particularly fond of him. As she finished cleaning, Maya allowed herself one more long look at the equations. In her mind, she was already solving them, her brain making connections and spotting patterns that would have impressed even Mr. Bennett. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she quietly closed the door behind her. Tomorrow night, there would be new equations to study, new problems to solve in secret. Little did she know that tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, everything would change. The next evening started like any other. Maya arrived at the school just as the last few teachers were heading to their cars. She nodded politely as they passed, receiving distracted waves in return. The sky had already darkened, and the school's empty hallways echoed with her footsteps as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the supply closet. After changing into her work uniform, Maya began her usual routine. The familiar scent of floor cleaner and the rhythmic motion of her mop brought a certain comfort. She worked her way through the building, floor by floor, room by room. The hours ticked by as classrooms were cleaned, trash cans emptied, and surfaces disinfected. Around 9:30 p.m., Maya approached the math department, pulling her cart behind her. She was surprised to see lights still streaming from under Mr. Bennet's classroom door. Usually the building was empty by this time. She hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," called a sharp voice. Maya pushed the door open to find Mr. Bennet hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of papers. His tie was loosened, and his brow furrowed in concentration as he scribbled furiously on a notepad. He barely looked up as she entered. "I'll just come back later," Maya said quietly, starting to back out of the room. "No need," he replied without looking up. "Do what you need to do. I won't be much longer." Maya nodded and began her cleaning routine, trying to work as quietly as possible. Mr. Bennet continued writing, occasionally muttering to himself as he crossed out equations and rewrote them. She couldn't help but glance at the chalkboard, which was filled with complex calculus problems. Her eyes quickly spotted the elegant pattern hidden within them, a beautiful mathematical relationship that clearly had Mr. Bennet stumped. The door opened again, and a woman with curly hair and glasses poked her head in. "Richard, we need to finalize tomorrow's department meeting agenda." "Dr. Winters," Mr. Bennet said, looking up for the first time. "Come in. I'm just finishing up this problem set for my AP students. I want to make sure it's challenging enough." Dr. Winters entered the room, nodding politely at Maya before turning her attention to the chalkboard. "That's quite complex for high school students, even AP ones." Mr. Bennet leaned back in his chair, a smug smile spreading across his face. "That's the point. These kids think they know everything. They need to be humbled occasionally." Maya continued cleaning, moving quietly around the edges of the room, wiping down surfaces and emptying the trash can. The teachers spoke as if she weren't there, a common occurrence that had long since stopped bothering her. "Speaking of humbling experiences," Mr. Bennet said suddenly, his voice carrying a sharp edge. He gestured toward Maya with his pen. "I bet even our janitor thinks she could solve these equations." Dr. Winters shifted uncomfortably. "Richard, that's not." "No, I'm serious," Mr. Bennet continued, standing up and walking to the board. "Everyone thinks math is so easy until they actually have to do it." Maya kept her eyes down, focusing on wiping a particularly stubborn mark off one of the student desks. Her heart beat faster as she felt both teachers' eyes on her. "Here," Mr. Bennet said, picking up a piece of chalk. With quick, precise movements, he wrote a complex integration problem on a clear section of the board. The equation sprawled across the green surface, symbols and numbers flowing from his hand with practiced ease. "Why don't you give it a try?" he said to Maya, his tone mockingly light. "I'll leave it up overnight. Let's see what you come up with." Dr. Winters touched his arm. "Richard, we should get back to the agenda. It's getting late." "Of course," he replied, placing the chalk back in the tray with a sharp click. He gathered his papers, still smirking. "I'm just having a bit of fun." The two teachers walked toward the door, their conversation already shifting to department matters. Mr. Bennet paused in the doorway, looking back at Maya, who stood motionless beside her cleaning cart. "Don't worry about erasing that particular problem," he called back. "I'm curious to see if our maintenance staff has hidden mathematical talents." His laughter echoed down the hallway as they left. Maya stood alone in the classroom, staring at the equation on the board. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear or embarrassment, but from something else entirely. Something that felt strangely like anticipation. For the next hour, Maya cleaned the rest of the classrooms in the math department, but her mind kept returning to Mr. Bennet's challenge. The complex equation on the board called to her like an old friend waiting for a conversation. She finished her regular duties faster than usual, but hands working automatically while her brain was already solving the problem step by step. When the clock struck 11:30 p.m., Maya had finished cleaning every room except Mr. Bennet's classroom. She pushed her cart back to the supply closet, put away her cleaning supplies, and made herself a cup of coffee from the small machine she kept hidden behind some paper towels. The school was completely silent now, the kind of quiet that makes even the smallest sounds seem loud. The humming of the vending machines in the teacher's lounge. The occasional click of the building settling. Her own breathing. Maya walked slowly back to Mr. Bennet's classroom, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. She paused at the door, suddenly hesitant. What was she doing? If someone saw her, they might think she was up to no good. A janitor with no business in a classroom except to clean it. But the school was empty. The security guard, Mr. Thompson, only checked the building once at midnight, and he always started from the opposite end. She had at least an hour before he reached this part of the school. Maya pushed open the door and flipped on the lights. The classroom looked different now, empty desks arranged in neat rows, the American flag hanging limply in the corner, and there, on the chalkboard, Mr. Bennett's equation staring back at her. She set her coffee cup on the teacher's desk and approached the board slowly. The problem was indeed complex. A multivariable calculus integration that would challenge even graduate students. Maya recognized it as a particularly difficult type of problem, one that required both technical skill and creative thinking. "Well, here we go," she whispered to herself. Maya picked up a piece of chalk, turning it over in her work-roughened hands. The familiar feel of it brought her back to her university days, to classrooms where she had once belonged. For a moment, she hesitated. This was her private world, her sanctuary from judgment. By solving this problem, she would be exposing a part of herself she had kept hidden for years. Then, with a deep breath, she began to write. Her hand moved across the board with confidence and grace that would have shocked Mr. Bennett. She broke down the complex problem methodically, starting with a substitution to simplify the integral. Her writing was neat and precise, each step flowing logically to the next. Unlike many mathematicians who scribbled their work haphazardly, Maya's solution unfolded like a story, clear and elegant. Halfway through, she paused, tapping the chalk against her lip. There was a more efficient approach, one she had developed on her own years ago when studying similar problems. It wasn't in any textbook she knew of, but it worked beautifully for this type of integration. Maya erased part of her work and started again with this new approach. She reframed the problem geometrically, visualizing the integral as a three-dimensional shape whose volume she needed to calculate. This perspective transformed the intimidating equation into something almost simple. As she worked, Maya lost track of time. The numbers and symbols flowed from her mind to her hand to the board in a perfect harmony. This was when she felt most alive, most herself, when the mathematics spoke through her. No one seeing her now would mistake her for just a janitor. In this moment, she was a mathematician, pure and simple. When she finally wrote the answer and circled it, she stepped back to admire her work. Not only had she solved Bennett's problem correctly, but she had done so in 3 different ways, noting the advantages of each approach in small, precise handwriting off to the side. She had also extended the problem, showing how it could be applied to a more general case. The sound of keys jingling in the hallway broke her concentration. Mr. Thompson was making his rounds earlier than usual tonight. Maya quickly placed the chalk back in the tray and grabbed her coffee cup. She switched off the lights and slipped out the back door of the classroom just as the beam of the security guard's flashlight swept down the main hallway. Heart pounding, Maya made her way back to the janitor's closet where she kept her personal belongings. As she changed out of her work uniform, a small smile played on her lips. What would Mr. Bennett's face look like tomorrow when he saw the board? Would he even believe a janitor had solved his impossible problem? Part of her wanted to be there to see it. A bigger part was afraid of what might happen if her secret talent was exposed. Maya had built a quiet life for herself, invisible but peaceful. Was she ready for that to change? As she drove home to her small apartment, the headlights cutting through the darkness, Maya wondered if she had made a mistake. Maybe she should go in early tomorrow and erase the board before anyone saw it. But even as the thought formed, she knew she wouldn't. For once, she wanted someone to see what she could do, what she had always been able to do. Let Mr. Bennett make what he would of it. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Mr. Bennett arrived at school earlier than usual the next morning. He hadn't slept well, bothered by the memory of his behavior toward the janitor. The morning light cast long shadows across the empty parking lot as he walked briskly toward the building, travel mug of coffee in hand, his breath visible in the cool air. He wasn't proud of himself. Dr. Winters had made that clear after they'd left the classroom, telling him his joke had been unnecessary and unkind. She was right, of course. He'd been showing off, trying to impress her with his cleverness at someone else's expense. The memory made him wince. "I'll apologize to her tonight," he muttered to himself as he unlocked the school's side entrance. He'd make it right somehow. The hallways were quiet this early, his footsteps echoing against the lockers as he made his way to his classroom. He'd left some papers ungraded, and with first period not starting for another hour, he'd have plenty of time to finish them before students arrived. Mr. Bennet pushed open his classroom door, flicked on the lights, and froze. His coffee mug slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud, hot liquid splashing across his shoes. The chalkboard was covered with elegant handwriting, not just the solution to his problem, but 3 different approaches, each one meticulously developed with perfect mathematical notation. The final answers were circled, with small notes explaining the merits of each method. In the corner of the board, there was even an extension of his original problem, taking it into areas he'd barely explored himself. "What the?" Mr. Bennet whispered, approaching the board slowly as if it might disappear. He scanned the work, looking for errors, for some indication that this was a prank by another math teacher. But there were no errors. The solutions were perfect, better than perfect. The third approach used a geometric interpretation he'd never seen before, elegantly bypassing the computational complexity he'd intended to make the problem difficult. His first thought was that another teacher must have come in and solved it, perhaps Dr. Santos from the college prep program, or maybe even Dr. Winters herself. But why would they do that? Mr. Bennet pulled out his phone and snapped several photos of the board, his hands slightly trembling. He needed to show this to someone. 20 minutes later, Dr. Eliza Santos stood beside him, studying the board with growing excitement. "This is remarkable," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Especially this third approach. I've never seen integration handled quite this way before." She turned to Bennet. "You didn't do this yourself as some kind of joke." "Of course not," he said, slightly offended. "I came in this morning and found it like this." "And you have no idea who did it?" Bennet hesitated, then remembered his joke from the previous night. "Well, there was the janitor." Dr. Santos raised an eyebrow. "The janitor?" He felt his face flush with embarrassment. "I left this problem on the board last night and sort of dared the janitor to solve it. As a joke. I never thought." "Which janitor?" Dr. Santos asked sharply. "The woman who cleans at night. Maya, I think her name is." Dr. Santos's eyes widened. "Maya Johnson. She's been here for about 3 years. You know her?" "Not really," Dr. Santos said slowly. "But I see her sometimes when I stay late. Quiet woman, always polite." She looked back at the board, then at Bennet. "You think she did this?" "I don't know what to think," he admitted. "It seems impossible." Dr. Santos pulled out her own phone. "There's one way to find out. The security cameras. Let me call Tom in it." 30 minutes later, they sat in the small security office, watching grainy footage on a monitor. The time stamp in the corner read 11:47 p.m. The black and white video showed Maya entering the empty classroom, approaching the board, and then, with absolute confidence, picking up a piece of chalk and beginning to write. "My God," Dr. Santos whispered as they watched Maya's hand move across the board with practiced precision. "Look at how she works. That's not someone copying from notes or struggling through a problem. That's someone who knows exactly what they're doing." Mr. Bennet couldn't speak. He watched, transfixed, as the woman he'd barely noticed, the woman he'd mocked, solved his challenging calculus problem with apparent ease. Not just solved it, but improved upon it, extended it, made it her own in ways he wouldn't have thought of. "Who is she?" he finally managed to ask. Dr. Santos shook her head slowly. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." As the bell rang signaling the start of first period, Mr. Bennet stood in his classroom, staring at the board he couldn't bring himself to erase. Students filed in, their chatter fading to confused murmurs as they noticed the complex mathematics covering the board. "Sir?" one of them asked. "Are we supposed to understand that?" "No," Mr. Bennet said quietly. "I'm not sure I fully understand it myself." For the first time in his teaching career, Richard Bennet felt humbled. As he began his lesson, carefully working around the solution on the board, he kept thinking about Maya Johnson and what other secrets might be hidden behind her quiet exterior. The day passed in a blur. Between classes, he found himself returning to the board, studying the elegant solution, particularly the geometric approach that showed such original thinking. By the time the final bell rang, he had made a decision. He would wait for Maya to arrive for her evening shift. He needed to speak with her, To apologize, yes, but more importantly, to understand. Who was this woman who cleaned floors by night and solved complex calculus problems that could challenge a university professor? And what was her story? Maya arrived at work that evening with a knot in her stomach. All day, she'd second-guessed her decision to solve that equation. What had she been thinking? Drawing attention to herself was the last thing she wanted. She'd built a careful life, one where she could pursue her passion for mathematics in private, without judgment or expectations. Now she'd potentially ruined that. She parked her old Honda in the nearly empty school lot. Only a few cars remained: teachers working late, the custodial supervisor's pickup truck, and an unfamiliar silver sedan. Maya gathered her things slowly, delaying the inevitable. Would Mr. Bennett be waiting for her? What would he say? Taking a deep breath, she walked through the side entrance and headed toward the janitor's closet to change into her uniform. The hallway lights were dimmed for evening, casting long shadows across the polished floor. As she rounded the corner, she saw them, Mr. Bennett and Dr. Santos, standing outside the closet door, deep in conversation. They looked up as she approached, their expressions a mix of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite name. Respect? That couldn't be right. Maya, Dr. Santos said warmly, stepping forward. We were hoping to catch you before you started your shift. Maya clutched her bag tighter. Is something wrong? Not at all, Dr. Santos replied quickly. Actually, we wanted to talk to you about the work you did on Mr. Bennett's calculus problem. So they knew. Of course they knew. Maya's heart raced as she searched for words. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I shouldn't have. Sorry? Mr. Bennett interrupted, his voice unusually gentle. Maya, your solution was extraordinary. Especially the geometric approach in your third method. I've never seen anything like it. Maya blinked, caught off guard by the genuine admiration in his tone. This wasn't the mockery she'd expected. It just seemed like the most elegant way to approach the problem, she said softly. May we talk somewhere more comfortable? Dr. Santos asked, gesturing toward the teacher's lounge down the hall. I think the three of us have a lot to discuss. 15 minutes later, Maya sat across from the two teachers, a cup of tea warming her hands. She'd never been in the teacher's lounge before, had only cleaned it late at night when it was empty. The comfortable chairs and personal touches made it feel like a different world from the one she usually inhabited at the school. How long have you been studying mathematics? Dr. Santos asked after Maya had taken a sip of her tea. Maya stared into her cup, considering how much to share. These people were strangers, really. And yet, after years of keeping her passion hidden, there was something freeing about finally speaking of it aloud. I was 3 credits shy of a mathematics degree from Howard University, she said finally. 20 years ago. Mr. Bennett's eyebrows shot up. What happened? Life happened. Maya set down her cup. My father got sick, lung cancer. My mother needed help with my younger siblings. Someone had to pay the bills. She shrugged, trying to make it seem like ancient history, though the pain of those abandoned dreams had never fully faded. I took a semester off, then another. Eventually, it just became easier to work full-time. But you continued studying on your own, Dr. Santos said. It wasn't a question. Maya nodded. Math was always mine. Something I could do anywhere with just a pencil and paper. I worked through advanced textbooks I found at library sales. I read journal articles online when I could access them. I kept notebooks. She stopped herself, suddenly self-conscious. Notebooks? Dr. Santos prompted gently. I've filled about 30 notebooks over the years. Problems I've worked through, theories I've explored. Some original ideas too, though I don't know if they're worth anything. The two teachers exchanged glances. Maya, Dr. Santos said carefully, based on what we saw on that chalkboard, I suspect your work has considerable value. Your approach to integration problems is innovative, potentially publishable. Maya shook her head. Who would publish the theories of a janitor with an incomplete degree? The mathematical community cares about the quality of ideas, not the credentials of the person who developed them, Dr. Santos insisted. And your geometric interpretation shows remarkable insight. Mr. Bennett leaned forward, his face serious. Maya, I owe you an apology. What I did yesterday was disrespectful and arrogant. I made assumptions about you based on your job, and that was wrong of me. Maya looked at him, surprised by his sincerity. "Thank you," she said simply. "I'd like to make it right, if I can," he continued. "Dr. Santos and I have been talking. She has connections at the university, and there might be opportunities." "I don't need charity," Maya interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. "This isn't charity," Dr. Santos said. "This is about recognizing talent and creating opportunities for that talent to flourish. Would you be willing to show us some of your notebooks? No pressure, but if what we saw yesterday is representative of your work, there are people who should see it." Maya hesitated, years of protective instincts warring with a long-buried hope. "I'll think about it," she finally said. As the conversation continued, Maya felt something shifting inside her, a door long closed beginning to crack open. These people were looking at her differently than anyone had in years, not as a janitor, but as a mathematician, a colleague. For the first time in 2 decades, Maya allowed herself to imagine a different future. "My shift starts soon," she said eventually, glancing at the clock. "Of course," Dr. Santos replied, handing Maya a business card. "But please call me. Whatever you decide, I'd like to talk more." As Maya left the lounge to begin her evening duties, her mind buzzed with new possibilities. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in many years, it was also exciting. The chalkboard equation that had started as a joke had become something else entirely, perhaps the first step on a journey back to herself. 3 days passed before Maya called the number on Dr. Santos' card. 3 days of internal debate, of weighing risks against possibilities, of wondering if she was brave enough to step out of the shadows she'd been hiding in for 2 decades. When she finally made the call, her hand trembled slightly as she held the phone. "I brought some of my notebooks," Maya said when Dr. Santos answered, "if you still want to see them." They met that afternoon in the school library after classes had ended. Maya had selected 5 notebooks from her collection, not her most recent work, but the ones she felt contained her strongest ideas. She'd stayed up late organizing them, adding tabs to important sections, writing brief explanations where her shorthand might be confusing to others. The care she took surprised her. These notebooks had never been meant for anyone else's eyes. Dr. Santos arrived with a tall man Maya didn't recognize. "This is Dr. William Chen," she explained. "He's the chair of the mathematics department at State University. I hope you don't mind that I invited him." Maya fought the urge to grab her notebooks and flee. This was moving too fast, but Dr. Chen's kind smile and gentle handshake calmed her slightly. "Dr. Santos mentioned your geometric approach to integration problems," he said as they sat at a table in the back of the library. "I'd love to see your work, if you're comfortable sharing it." Hesitantly, Maya opened the first notebook to a section she'd marked. "This is where I started developing the method," she explained softly. For the next 2 hours, the 3 mathematicians, for that's what they were, even if Maya didn't have the title, discussed her work. At first, Maya spoke barely above a whisper, uncertain and apologetic. But as the conversation continued, her voice grew stronger, more confident. These people understood what she was trying to do. They asked intelligent questions that pushed her thinking further. They treated her ideas with respect. "This is remarkable work," Dr. Chen said finally, closing the last notebook with care. "Especially considering you developed these theories in isolation, without the benefit of academic discourse." He looked at Maya with undisguised admiration. "You have a natural talent for seeing patterns and connections that others miss." Maya's eyes burned with unexpected tears. How long had she waited to hear someone say that? To have her mathematical thinking validated by someone who understood its value. "What you've done here," Dr. Chen continued, pointing to a sequence of equations in the 3rd notebook, "could form the foundation of a significant paper. With some refinement, I believe it could be published in a respectable journal." "Published?" Maya repeated, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Dr. Santos leaned forward. "Maya, we've been talking about your situation. State University has a program for non-traditional students that might be perfect for you. You could complete your degree while working as a research assistant in the math department. The hours would be flexible, the pay decent, likely better than what you're making now, and you'd have access to resources and colleagues to help develop your theories." Maya stared at her, speechless. It sounded too good to be true. "Why would you do this for me?" "We're not doing it for you," Dr. Chen said gently. "We're doing it for mathematics. Ideas like yours shouldn't remain hidden in notebooks. They should be shared, built upon, challenged, and refined. That's how the field advances." Maya looked down at her hands, rough from years of cleaning, strong from years of hard work. Hands that had mopped floors at night and solved complex equations by day. Could those same hands now write papers for academic journals? Guide students? Build a different kind of life? "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. "It's been so long since I was in a classroom as anything other than the person who cleans it, I mean." "You'll have support," Dr. Santos assured her. "And you can start slowly, one class, a few hours in the research lab each week. You don't have to give up your job here immediately." Over the next few weeks, Maya's life began to transform. She registered for a single class at State University, advanced theoretical mathematics, while continuing her night shifts at the school. Dr. Chen introduced her to faculty members who shared her interests. One professor, upon reviewing her geometric integration method, offered her a position helping him develop materials for his graduate seminar. Word spread quickly around Westfield High as well. Mr. Bennett, still humbled by his misjudgment, offered to cover some of her shifts so she could attend evening lectures at the university. The principal, who had barely noticed Maya before, suddenly took an interest in her story and spoke proudly of the school's hidden genius. Students began to seek her out too. A group of girls from the math club asked if she would look at their competition problems. A struggling sophomore requested tutoring. Maya found herself setting up informal help sessions during her breaks, chalking equations on the board that had once been merely her silent companion. "You explain things differently," one student told her. "You make it make sense." For the first time in 20 years, Maya began to see herself as others now saw her, not just as a janitor who happened to be good with numbers, but as a mathematician who happened to clean floors. The distinction mattered. It changed how she carried herself, how she spoke, how she imagined her future. One evening, as Maya prepared to leave for her class at the university, she paused in Mr. Bennett's classroom where her journey had begun. The room was empty, the chalkboard clean. She picked up a piece of chalk and wrote a simple equation, the first one her father had taught her when she was just 6 years old. Below it, she added, "Sometimes the most beautiful solutions come from unexpected places." She didn't know who would see it tomorrow, but she hoped they would understand.